Arya Moonwhisper pressed her long fingers against the communication console as another alarm screamed through the command center. The elegant spires of Sylvanas Prime stretched beyond the crystal windows, their silver surfaces reflecting the emergency lights that now bathed everything in red. She had never seen her homeworld look so fragile. "How long until they reach the inner system?" she asked, without looking away from her screens. Captain Lyra Starbreeze moved behind her with the fluid grace that all Veltar possessed. 12 hours, maybe less if they increase speed. Arya closed her eyes and felt the weight of her entire species pressing down on her shoulders. The Devourers had already consumed 6 worlds in the Outer Rim. Each planet had fallen in less than a day. Their bioships moved like living nightmares through space, adapting to every defense the Confederacy threw at them. "The Council still believes negotiation is possible," Lyra said quietly. "The Council is wrong." Arya turned to face her captain. Her silver hair caught the emergency lighting as she spoke. "We cannot fight these creatures. Our weapons were made for peace. Our ships were built for exploration. We are going to die." Lyra placed a gentle hand on her communication officer's shoulder. "Then what do you suggest?" Arya had been thinking about this moment for days. Ever since the first distress calls had come from the border worlds. Ever since she had seen the recordings of what the Devourers did to captured populations. The images still haunted her dreams. Entire cities consumed and transformed into something alien and wrong. "There are stories," she said slowly, "old merchant tales from the Galactic Rim. They speak of a species that evolved on a death world, a place so dangerous that it created perfect killers." "You mean the humans?" The word hung in the air between them like a forbidden curse. The Galactic Union had classified humanity as a restricted species decades ago. Their home planet was listed as a Class 12 death world. The few traders who had made contact described beings that thought warfare was an art form. "The stories say they fight wars that last for years, that they consider acceptable losses in numbers that would horrify us, that they have weapons designed specifically to kill other thinking beings." Lyra shook her head. "Even if the stories are true, they are forbidden to leave their sector. The Union maintains the quarantine for good reason." "The Union is not here." Arya gestured toward the windows where the first evacuation ships were beginning to leave the surface. "The Union did not help us when the Devourers came. The Union will not help us now." Another alarm joined the chorus filling the command center. This one was different, deeper, more urgent. Lyra moved to her command station and her face went pale as she read the displays. "Scout ships," she whispered. "Devourer scouts have entered the system." Arya felt her heart stop. They were out of time. In a few hours, the main fleet would arrive. In a day, Sylvanas Prime would be just another consumed world, feeding the endless hunger of the swarm. She turned back to her console and began entering commands with desperate speed. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls as she accessed the Deep Space Communication Array, the most powerful transmitter in Confederacy space, built to send messages across thousands of light years. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked. "Sending a message to the Rim, to human space." "Arya, you cannot. The Union is not going to exist in a week if we do nothing." Arya's voice was steady despite the fear in her chest. "I am going to call the Deathworlders." She began recording her message in standard galactic common. Her voice was clear and strong despite everything falling apart around them. "This is Communications Officer Arya Moonwhisper of the Astral Confederacy. We are under attack by a hostile species we call the Devourers. They have consumed 6 of our worlds and are approaching our core systems. Our defensive fleets have been destroyed. Our people are dying." She paused and looked out at her beautiful homeworld one more time. "We know of your reputation as warriors. We know your species understands warfare in ways we do not. We are willing to share our star charts, our technology, and our knowledge of this galaxy. In return, we ask for your help. We ask you to come and fight for us because we cannot fight for ourselves." Arya attached the complete star charts of Confederacy space to the message. Military frequencies, jump coordinates, and detailed information about Devourer tactics. Everything a human fleet would need to find them and engage the enemy. "There is no time for negotiation or diplomacy," she continued. If you receive this message and decide to help us, we will know you are coming when our sensors detect your ships. If you decide we are not worth saving, we understand. But please remember that if the Devourers are not stopped here, they will continue to spread across the galaxy. Eventually, they will reach every world, including yours. She ended the recording and looked at Lyra. I need your authorization to transmit. Lyra stared at her for a long moment. Outside the windows, more evacuation ships were lifting off. The silver spires of their capital city looked fragile against the growing darkness of space where scout ships now prowled like hungry predators. The Union will never forgive us for this. The Union will not exist to forgive us if we do nothing. Lyra moved to her command station and entered her authorization codes. Send the message. Arya pressed the transmission key and felt the massive communication array power-up beneath the surface of their world. The message raced out into space faster than light, carrying with it the desperate hope of an entire civilization. How long until it reaches human space? Lyra asked. 6 hours. And how long for them to respond? Arya looked at the tactical displays, showing Devourer scout ships moving through their outer system like sharks sensing blood in the water. If they come at all, they will need time to gather their fleets. Time to plan, time to travel. We may not have time. Then we hold on as long as we can. Arya turned back to her console and began sending evacuation orders to the remaining civilian populations. And we pray that the stories about Deathworlders are true. Commander Luna Martinez was reviewing fleet deployment reports when the priority signal came through. The UES Valkyrie was patrolling the edge of human space, maintaining the quarantine boundary that kept her species isolated from the broader galaxy. It was boring work, but necessary. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from outside our territory, her communication officer reported. Luna looked up from her reports. From where? Deep space, beyond the quarantine zone. Luna felt a cold touch of uncertainty. In 40 years of patrolling the boundary, they had never received a message from the outside. The Galactic Union maintained strict communication silence with humanity. Put it through. The message played on the main screen, and Luna watched as an alien woman with silver hair and pointed ears spoke about death and war and desperate need. When it ended, the bridge was completely silent. Captain Harper, Luna said quietly. Yes, Commander. Plot a course for the coordinates in that message. And signal the fleet. We are going to war. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Confederacy territory like predators stepping into a peaceful garden. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the tactical displays aboard the UES Liberty as 47 human warships took defensive positions around their flagship. Each vessel bristled with weapons that the peaceful aliens had probably never imagined. Signal from the Confederacy fleet, her communication officer announced. They are requesting permission to approach. Kate studied the alien ships on her screens. They were beautiful in a way that human vessels were not. Curved lines and flowing surfaces that looked more like art than machines of war. She could see immediately why they were losing against the Devourers. Grant permission, but keep our weapons powered. Commander Luna Martinez watched from the bridge of her own ship as the Veltar vessels approached. The aliens moved with careful precision, broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. It was almost painful to see how unprepared they were for real war. Dr. Chen, Luna said to the xenobiologist standing beside her command chair. Are you ready for first contact? Dr. Maya Chen nodded, though her hands shook slightly as she held her translation equipment. The universal translator is calibrated for their language patterns. We should be able to communicate. The lead Confederacy ship was a graceful vessel, called the Starweaver. As it approached, Luna could see through its transparent sections to the beings inside. They looked almost human except for their pointed ears and silver hair. Beautiful and fragile like everything else in their territory. Incoming communication, her officer reported. Put them through. The main screen flickered, and Luna found herself looking at Arya Moon Whisper, the alien woman who had sent the desperate message that brought the human fleet across the galaxy. She looked tired and scared, but there was strength in her eyes that Luna respected. Commander Martinez, Arya said, in careful but clear human language. I cannot express how grateful we are that you came. We received your message. Luna replied. "You said you were under attack." "The Devourers have taken 2 more worlds since I sent the transmission. They will reach our core systems within days." Luna studied the alien woman's face. "Show me what?" "We are fighting!" The screen changed to display tactical recordings from the recent battles. Luna watched as organic ships that looked like twisted insects moved through space. They absorbed weapons fire and adapted to each attack. When they reached the defending vessels, they didn't destroy them cleanly. They consumed them, broke them apart, and incorporated the pieces into their own hulls. "These are the enemy," Arya explained. "They do not just conquer worlds. They consume everything. Every person, every animal, every plant. They turn it all into more of themselves." Captain Zoe Harper leaned forward from her position at the tactical station. "What are their numbers?" "We estimate the main fleet contains over 200 bioships. The largest are the size of small moons." Zoe exchanged glances with Luna. In human terms, those were significant numbers but not impossible odds. The aliens seemed to think it was hopeless. "What defensive capabilities do your ships have?" Luna asked. Arya looked confused by the question. "We have plasma shields and defensive barriers. Our weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy." "Disable." "We do not believe in killing," Arya said quietly. "Our weapons drain power systems and create electromagnetic fields that prevent movement. We had hoped to stop the Devourers without harming them." Luna felt a cold understanding settle in her chest. These people had evolved on worlds where violence was unnecessary. They had built a civilization based on cooperation and peaceful resolution. They literally did not understand the concept of warfare as humans knew it. "The Devourers cannot be reasoned with," she said gently. "We learned that when they consumed our first colony. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They simply consume." Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the communication system. "Commander Martinez, we need to establish proper first contact protocols. I am sending Dr. Chen over to the Confederacy." "Flagship." An hour later, Maya Chen found herself aboard the Star Weaver, trying not to stare at the aliens around her. The Veltar were graceful in a way that made humans look clumsy by comparison. They moved like dancers and spoke in voices that sounded like music. Arya led her through corridors that curved and flowed like natural formations. There were no hard angles anywhere, no weapons visible. Even the security stations looked more like information desks than military installations. "Your ships are beautiful," Maya said as they walked. "Thank you. We designed them to reflect the harmony we seek in all things." Arya paused at a viewing port that showed the human fleet in the distance. "Your vessels are very different." Maya looked out at the angular human warships with their armor plating and weapon batteries. "We designed them to survive." They reached a conference room where other Confederacy leaders were waiting. Maya was introduced to Captain Lyra Starbreeze, Counselor Kira Stellar Weave, and several other officials whose names she struggled to pronounce. They all had the same ethereal beauty and the same underlying fear. "We have prepared detailed information about Devourer tactics," Kira said, activating a holographic display. "Perhaps your military leaders can find weaknesses we missed." Maya studied the tactical data and felt her heart sink. The Confederacy had fought the Devourers like they were a natural disaster. They had tried to minimize casualties and preserve as much as possible. They had retreated when positions became untenable, and avoided actions that might harm civilian populations. "You fought a defensive war," she said finally. "Of course. Our goal was to protect our people. But you never attacked their supply lines. You never targeted their breeding grounds. You never tried to make them pay a price for attacking you." The aliens looked confused by her words. Arya spoke first. "We do not understand." Maya realized she was looking at beings who had never learned the harsh lessons that shaped human civilization. They had never faced predators that could not be reasoned with. They had never needed to become monsters to fight monsters. "In human warfare, the goal is not just to defend," she explained carefully. "The goal is to make your enemy regret attacking you, to make them understand that the cost of fighting you is higher than any benefit they might gain." "You mean revenge?" Lyra said. "We mean survival. If you only defend, you give your enemy time to adapt and grow stronger. If you attack their ability to make war, you can end the conflict." The aliens exchanged glances that Maya could not interpret. Finally, Kira spoke. "Your species has experience with this kind of warfare." "Unfortunately, yes." "And you believe you can stop the Devourers?" Maya thought about the human fleet waiting in space. 47 ships filled with weapons designed by a species that had learned warfare in the most brutal school imaginable. Nuclear missiles, kinetic bombardment systems, electromagnetic pulse weapons, and biological warfare capabilities that the peaceful Confederacy could not imagine. "We can try," she said. "But you need to understand something. Human military doctrine is not like yours. We do not fight to disable. We do not try to preserve enemy forces. When we go to war, we go to win completely." "What does that mean?" Arya asked. Maya looked at the beautiful, peaceful beings around her and tried to find words that would not terrify them. "It means we will do whatever is necessary to stop the Devourers, even if it means doing things that horrify you. Even if it means accepting casualties that you would consider unacceptable." The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Arya spoke. "Our world has 6 billion people. If the Devourers reach it, all of them will die. If working with your military means some of them survive, then we will accept your methods." Maya nodded and activated her communication device. "Admiral Sullivan, this is Dr. Chen. We need to establish joint command protocols immediately. And Admiral, you should know that our new allies have never fought a real war. They are going to need time to understand what that means. Back on the Liberty." Admiral Sullivan looked at the tactical displays showing Devourer forces moving steadily toward the Confederacy core worlds. Time was the one thing they did not have. The beautiful, peaceful aliens were about to learn what it meant to fight alongside Deathworlders. She opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. We are going to war against an enemy that has never faced human military doctrine. They have adapted to fight peaceful beings who try to minimize casualties. They have not adapted to fight humans. Prepare for immediate combat operations." Throughout the fleet, human crews began the familiar preparations for battle. Weapons were armed, armor was sealed, and emergency protocols were activated. For the first time in decades, humanity was going to war, but this time, they were fighting to save others rather than themselves. Colonel Lisa Brooks crouched in the ruins of what had once been a Confederacy research station on the border world of Kepler 7. The twisted metal and organic growths told a story that made her stomach turn. The Devourers had not simply destroyed this place. They had transformed it into something alien and wrong. "Report, Colonel," came Admiral Sullivan's voice through her helmet communication system. Lisa moved carefully through the corrupted hallways, her scanner recording everything. "It is worse than the Confederacy report suggested. The Devourers do not just consume biological matter. They are incorporating technology, architecture, even the basic structure of the facilities." She paused at what had been a laboratory. The walls pulsed with a rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. Cables and conduits had been replaced with something that looked like veins. Computer terminals had been absorbed into flesh-like surfaces that still showed faint displays. "They are learning," she continued. "Every piece of equipment they consume becomes part of their knowledge base. Every person they absorb adds to their understanding." Back aboard the Liberty, Admiral Sullivan studied the reports coming in from Lisa's reconnaissance team. Commander Amy Foster, her intelligence officer, was analyzing the data with growing concern. "Admiral, if Colonel Brooks is correct, then the Devourers are not just a military threat. They are an information threat. Every battle they fight, every world they consume, makes them smarter." Sullivan nodded grimly. "What do we know about their origin?" "The Confederacy has provided us with their historical archives. Sage Nightbloom has been working with our analysts." Sage Nightbloom was an ancient Veltar who served as the Confederacy's chief historian. She had lived for over 800 years and had access to records that went back millennia. When she entered the human briefing room, her presence commanded respect even from hardened military officers. "The Devourers appeared at the edge of our galaxy approximately 50 years ago," she began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "They came from the void between galaxies, traveling in bioships that had clearly consumed other civilizations." Captain Zoe Harper leaned forward in her chair. "How many civilizations?" Our analysis suggests at least 12 distinct technological signatures in their bioships, possibly more. Dr. Maya Chen studied the holographic displays showing Devourer, vessel construction. They are not just consuming individuals. They are consuming entire species' knowledge and capabilities. Correct. Each absorbed civilization adds new capabilities to their fleet, new weapons, new defenses, new tactical approaches. Commander Luna Martinez joined the briefing by video link from the Valkyrie. What about their command structure? Do they have leaders we can target? Sage Nightbloom's expression grew darker. They appear to function as a collective consciousness. Individual units can operate independently, but they are all connected to a central intelligence. We believe this core mind is located somewhere within their fleet, but we have never been able to identify it. Sullivan felt a cold understanding settle in her mind. A hive mind that learns from every encounter and shares that knowledge instantly across their entire force. Yes. This is why conventional warfare has failed against them. They adapt to every tactic we use within hours. Lisa Brooks's voice came through the communication system from the surface of Kepler-7. Admiral, I am sending you something you need to see. The main display changed to show a recording from Lisa's suit camera. She was standing in what appeared to be a holding area, filled with transparent containers. Each container held a partially consumed being from various species. They were still alive, but their bodies were being slowly transformed by some kind of parasitic organism. They do not kill quickly. Lisa's voice was tight with controlled anger. They keep victims alive during the consumption process. They are extracting memories, knowledge, even personality traits. Maya Chen studied the horrific images with professional detachment, but her face was pale. They are not just consuming bodies. They are consuming minds. Which explains how they learn so quickly, Amy Foster added. Every person they capture becomes an involuntary source of intelligence about their enemies. The briefing room was silent. As the implications sank in, the humans had faced many enemies in their violent history, but nothing quite like this. An enemy that became stronger with every victory, that learned from every defeat, that turned captured knowledge against their former allies. There is more, Sage Nightbloom said quietly. Our analysis of their bioships suggests they have encountered humans before. Every human in the room turned to stare at her. Sullivan spoke first. That is impossible. We have maintained the quarantine for 40 years. Not humans from your current civilization. But the technological signatures we have detected suggest they absorbed a human colony ship approximately 2 centuries ago, before your species achieved faster-than-light travel. The cold understanding in Sullivan's mind turned to ice. A generation ship. Most likely, we have detected human-style kinetic weapons integrated into their bioships. Human tactical thinking in their fleet movements. They know how your species fights. Commander Foster leaned back in her chair. That explains their rapid adaptation to our initial probes. They were expecting human tactics. Luna Martinez's voice came through the communication link with deadly calm. Admiral, we need to reconsider our approach. If they have absorbed human knowledge, then standard human military doctrine may not be sufficient. Sullivan nodded. Agreed. Colonel Brooks, what is your assessment of their ground capabilities? Lisa's voice carried the strain of what she had seen. They have integrated absorbed species into their ground forces. I am seeing twisted versions of Confederacy soldiers, Alliance Marines, and what appear to be human military personnel. They retain enough of their original knowledge to use captured equipment and tactics. But they are no longer fully conscious, Maya Chen asked. No. They appear to be controlled by the collective intelligence, but they retain muscle memory and technical knowledge. The briefing room erupted in quiet conversations as the officers discussed the implications. Finally, Sullivan called for order. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing an enemy that has consumed multiple civilizations and learned from each one. They know our tactics. They understand our technology. They have absorbed human military knowledge from previous encounters. She stood and walked to the tactical display, showing the approaching Devourer fleet. Over 200 bioships of various sizes, some as large as small moons. All of them filled with the absorbed knowledge of dozens of species. However, they have one critical weakness. They have never faced a full human military response. The colony ship they absorbed was civilian. The Confederacy forces they have fought were peaceful. They have never encountered human warfare at its most effective. Captain Harper spoke up. What do you mean, Admiral? They know how humans fight when they are exploring or defending. They do not know how humans fight when they are hunting. Sullivan turned to face her officers. We are going to teach them the difference. Nova Crystal Song, how are your psychic warfare preparations? Nova Crystal Song was a Veltar specialist who had been working with human technicians to develop countermeasures against the hive mind. We believe we can create localized interference fields that will disrupt their collective consciousness. It will not stop them, but it may slow their adaptation rate. Good. Colonel Brooks, I want detailed intelligence on their ground capabilities. If we are going to fight them planet by planet, we need to know what we are facing. Understood, Admiral. Commander, Foster, work with Sage Nightbloom to identify any other absorbed civilizations we can learn about. Every species they have consumed represents both a threat and an opportunity. Yes, Admiral. Sullivan looked around the room at the mix of human and alien faces. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to face an enemy that has conquered multiple galaxies. They are stronger than us, more numerous than us, and they have absorbed the knowledge of civilizations we cannot imagine. She paused and let that sink in before continuing. But they have made one critical mistake. They have entered human space and threatened human allies. And that means they are about to discover why the Galactic Union maintains a quarantine around our territory. The briefing ended and officers began filing out to prepare for the coming battle. Luna Martinez remained on the communication link as the room emptied. Admiral, what are our real chances? Sullivan looked at the tactical displays showing the Devourer fleet moving inexorably toward the Confederacy core worlds. Honestly, Commander, I do not know. But I know one thing for certain. What is that? We are going to make them regret coming here. General Rosa Martinez stood in the cargo bay of the UES Valkyrie, watching her sister Luna brief the combined assault teams. Around them, human Marines checked their weapons while Veltar specialists calibrated their psychic enhancement equipment. The mixture of species preparing for battle would have been impossible to imagine just weeks ago. Remember, once we breach their bioships, standard Confederacy warfare rules do not apply, Luna was saying. These vessels are living organisms. They will try to heal damage, adapt to our weapons, and trap us inside them. Echo Void Whisper, a Veltar infiltration specialist, raised her hand. What if we encounter absorbed personnel? Major Claire Davidson, the human siege warfare expert, answered without hesitation. You put them down. They are not your people anymore. They are extensions of the enemy consciousness. Echo looked uncomfortable with the blunt answer, but she nodded. The peaceful Confederacy species were slowly learning the harsh realities of warfare against an implacable enemy. Captain Diana Wells finished her pre-flight check aboard her starfighter and opened a communication channel to her squadron. Remember, people, these bioships learn from every attack. Do not use the same approach twice. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can adapt. The human fleet had been harassing Devourer scout formations for 3 days, learning their capabilities and testing their responses. The results were both encouraging and terrifying. The bioships adapted quickly to conventional attacks, but they seemed confused by human tactics that prioritized destruction over preservation. Admiral Sullivan watched the tactical displays from the Liberty's command center as the main Devourer fleet entered the outer system of Sylvanas Prime. Over 200 bioships moving in perfect coordination, their organic hulls pulsing with absorbed technologies from a dozen different civilizations. All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan, she broadcast to the combined human and Confederacy fleet. Today we implement Operation Deathworld. The enemy has learned to fight peaceful beings who value every life. They have not learned to fight beings who value victory above all else. Commander Amy Foster coordinated the opening moves from her intelligence station. The plan was unlike anything the Confederacy had ever attempted. Instead of trying to preserve their infrastructure and minimize casualties, they were going to make the Devourers pay a price for every meter of space they claimed. The first phase began when human stealth ships released clouds of nuclear mines throughout the outer system. Not the clean fusion weapons the Confederacy used for construction, but dirty fission devices designed to create radiation fields that would persist for decades. "Admiral, the Devourers are moving to investigate the minefields," reported the tactical officer. "Let them come." The bioships probed the radiation clouds with living sensors, trying to understand the new threat. When the first Devourer vessel triggered a mine, the explosion was unlike anything they had encountered. Instead of a clean burst of energy, the device created an expanding sphere of lethal radiation that began eating away at their organic hulls. Nova Crystal Song monitored the psychic interference field from her position aboard the Starweaver. The hive mind is experiencing confusion. They cannot understand why we would contaminate space with weapons that will make it uninhabitable. "Because we are not trying to preserve this system," Admiral Sullivan replied. "We are trying to make them regret entering it." The second phase began when Colonel Lisa Brooks led her Special Forces teams in boarding actions against the smaller bioships. The humans moved through the living corridors like a disease, using flamethrowers and viral weapons that the organic vessels could not adapt to quickly enough. "The bioship is trying to seal itself against our intrusion," Lisa reported, as her team carved their way toward the central nervous system. "It is rerouting circulation and growing new barriers. Then we give it something it cannot adapt to," Major Davidson replied, activating the thermobaric charges her team had planted throughout the vessel. The explosion tore through the bioship, from the inside creating a burst of superheated gas that burned through organic matter faster than it could regenerate. The vessel convulsed and died, its connection to the hive mind severed. Echo Void Whisper watched the human tactics with fascination and horror. They are not trying to capture or study the enemy. They are simply destroying everything. "That is the point," Luna Martinez explained as she coordinated the next wave of attacks. "The Devourers learn from everything they encounter, so we make sure they do not survive the encounter." Captain Diana Wells led her starfighter squadron in strafing, runs against the larger bioships using tactics that no Confederacy pilot would have considered. Instead of trying to disable enemy weapons, they targeted the life support systems. Instead of avoiding civilian areas of the bioships, they specifically attacked the sections where absorbed beings were held. "Wells, you are firing on captive populations," Echo said in horror. "I am preventing the enemy from using those people against us," Diana replied coldly. "Every absorbed being becomes part of their knowledge base. Everyone we free through death is information they cannot use." The Devourer fleet began to adapt to the new tactics, but their adaptations were based on their experience with rational enemies. They reinforced their hulls against nuclear weapons, but could not understand why the humans continued to use radiation that made captured territory worthless. They developed countermeasures against boarding parties, but could not predict the human willingness to destroy entire vessels rather than capture them. General Rosa Martinez coordinated the ground defense of Sylvanas Prime as Devourer landing forces descended toward the surface. The beautiful capital city had been evacuated, its crystal spires now serving as the foundation for a fortress designed by human military engineers. "The enemy is landing in the ceremonial gardens," reported one of her spotters. Rosa smiled grimly. "Perfect! Execute Order Scorched Earth." The gardens erupted in flames as hidden incendiary devices ignited. The Devourer ground forces found themselves advancing through an inferno that consumed everything organic it touched. When they tried to absorb the burning vegetation to heal their wounds, they only spread the fire through their own biosystems. Arya, Moon Whisper, watched the battle from the command center, her face reflecting the horror of seeing her beautiful world turned into a killing field. "Is this how humans always fight?" "Only when we have to," Luna Martinez replied. "Your people fought to preserve what you loved. We fight to ensure our enemies cannot take it from us." The third phase of the operation began when Admiral Sullivan ordered the stellar cascade weapons to be armed. These were human superweapons that had never been used in actual combat, designed to trigger chain reactions in stellar matter that would destroy entire star systems. "Admiral, if we use those weapons, we will make this entire system uninhabitable for millions of years." "Sage," Nightbloom protested. "Better uninhabitable than consumed," Sullivan replied. "If the Devourers take this system, they will use its resources to build an even larger fleet. We deny them that victory." The Devourer hive mind finally began to understand what it was facing. These were not the peaceful beings they had learned to fight. These were predators who would destroy everything rather than surrender it to their enemies. For the first time in their expansion across multiple galaxies, the Devourers encountered a species that valued winning more than surviving. The bioships began to retreat from the outer system, but the human fleet pursued them relentlessly. Captain Zoe Harper coordinated ramming attacks that sent heavily armored human vessels directly into the largest bioships. The crews of these ships knew they would not survive, but their sacrifice tore massive holes in the enemy fleet. "The enemy is attempting to withdraw," Nova Crystal Song reported. "The hive mind is experiencing something we have never detected before." "What is that?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "Fear. They are afraid of us." The Devourer fleet continued its retreat, leaving behind dozens of destroyed bioships and the burning remnants of their ground forces. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered an enemy that fought without mercy, without hesitation, and without any intention of preserving what they conquered. Admiral Sullivan watched the enemy flee and felt no satisfaction in the victory. The cost had been enormous. 3 human ships destroyed, hundreds of personnel killed, and an entire star system contaminated with radiation that would last for millennia. But the Devourers had learned something from this encounter that they had never learned before. They had learned what it meant to fight Deathworlders. They had learned that some species would burn down the galaxy rather than surrender it to their enemies. "Admiral," Commander Foster reported, "long-range sensors are detecting the main Devourer fleet moving toward the core worlds. They are avoiding this system entirely." "Good. Send a message to the Confederacy leadership. Tell them that Phase 1 is complete. Now we begin the real war." Aria Moonwhisper looked at the tactical displays showing the radiation clouds that now filled their outer system. Her people would never be able to return to those worlds. The cost of victory had been higher than anything the Confederacy had ever imagined. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the holographic display showing the Devourer core cluster, 3 star systems linked by massive bioconstructs that pulsed with the collective consciousness of the hive mind. Intelligence gathered over months of brutal warfare had finally revealed the location of the enemy's central intelligence. Now came the hardest decision of her career. "The Stellar Cascade weapons are armed and ready," Commander Amy Foster reported from her station. "We have confirmed targeting solutions for all 3 core systems." Luna Martinez joined the final briefing via secure communication from the Valkyrie. Her ship had been chosen to lead the suicide run that would deliver the Cascade devices to their targets. "My team is ready, Admiral. We understand the mission parameters." Aria Moonwhisper stood beside the human officers, her silver hair now streaked with the stress of months of war. The peaceful Confederacy had learned hard lessons about survival, but the cost had changed them in ways they were still discovering. "If we trigger the Cascade weapons, we will destroy 3 entire star systems," she said quietly. "Billions of absorbed beings are still alive in those bioconstructs. We will be killing them to stop the Devourers." Sullivan nodded grimly. "I know, but if we do not stop the hive mind here, it will continue to spread across the galaxy. Eventually, it will consume everything." The war had raged for 8 months, spreading across dozens of systems as the combined human and Confederacy forces pushed the Devourers back toward their core territory. The aliens had learned to fight like humans, accepting casualties and collateral damage that would have been unthinkable before the invasion. The humans had learned to appreciate the precision and coordination that came from working with species that had evolved beyond the need for violence. But the price had been enormous. Entire Confederacy worlds had been evacuated and abandoned, when human scorched earth tactics made them uninhabitable. Human fleets had been sacrificed in suicide attacks against bioships that adapted too quickly to conventional weapons. The beautiful, peaceful galaxy that the Confederacy had built was disappearing under the weight of total war. "The Devourer fleet is moving to intercept our approach," reported Captain Diana Wells from her starfighter squadron. "They know what we are planning." General Rosa Martinez coordinated the final ground operations from the surface of a contested world where human marines and Veltar specialists fought side by side against absorbed enemy forces. "Admiral, we have confirmed that the Cascade devices will work. The test detonation in the empty system created the chain reaction exactly as predicted. Sullivan looked around the command center at the faces of beings from two different worlds, who had learned to trust each other in the crucible of war. Humans who had discovered species worth protecting beyond their own. Aliens who had learned that sometimes peace could only be preserved through terrible violence. Colonel Brooks, what is the status of the rescue operations? Lisa Brooks had spent the last month leading infiltration missions into the core systems, attempting to extract as many absorbed beings as possible before the final assault. We have recovered approximately 12,000 individuals from various species. But, Admiral, there are still millions more in the bioconstructs, and they cannot be saved without compromising the mission. No, Admiral. The hive mind will detect any large-scale rescue operation and relocate the core intelligence before we can strike. Echo Void Whisper had become the liaison between human special forces and Confederacy infiltration teams. Months of working with Deathworlders had taught her tactics that no Veltar had ever imagined. The absorbed beings we have rescued confirm that the core intelligence is located in the central bioconstruct of the middle system. Destroying it will sever the connection to all Devourer forces across the galaxy. Dr. Maya Chen studied the final medical reports from the rescued victims. The absorption process is irreversible after a certain point. The beings still trapped in the core systems have been partially converted. Even if we could rescue them, they would not survive separation from the hive mind. Nova Crystal's song monitored the psychic interference fields that would hopefully prevent the hive mind from detecting the final assault until it was too late. The collective consciousness is focused on the approaching fleet. I believe we can maintain the element of surprise. Sullivan made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. Operation Final Solution is authorized. All units proceed to your assigned targets. The combined fleet moved toward the core systems in 3 separate task forces. Luna Martinez led the Central Assault Group directly toward the primary bioconstruct. Captain Zoe Harper commanded the secondary strike force that would ensure no Devourer vessels escaped the cascade effect. Echo Void Whisper and her infiltration teams would sabotage the outer defenses to create a clear path for the cascade weapons. As the UES Valkyrie approached the massive bioconstruct that housed the core intelligence, Luna felt the weight of what they were about to do. The structure ahead of them was larger than most moons, its surface covered with absorbed cities and transformed landscapes from dozens of conquered worlds. Millions of beings lived within its organic walls, their minds enslaved to the collective consciousness, but their bodies still alive. Cascade device is armed and ready, reported her weapons officer. Take us in. The Valkyrie penetrated the outer defenses with support from the rest of the human fleet. The bioconstruct's immune system responded like a living organism fighting an infection, sending waves of defender organisms to stop the intrusion. Human starfighters engaged the defenders while the capital ships carved a path toward the core. Aria Moonwhisper coordinated the final communications between all units from aboard the Starweaver. Luna, Echo's team has successfully disabled the primary defensive grid. You have a clear approach to the target. Understood. Beginning final approach. The Valkyrie dove into the heart of the bioconstruct, flying through corridors that pulsed with the rhythm of an alien heartbeat. Luna could see absorbed beings through the transparent sections, their faces vacant, but their bodies moving with perfect coordination as they tried to repair the damage from the human assault. Admiral, I have a clear shot at the core intelligence, Luna reported. Fire when ready, Sullivan replied. Luna hesitated for just a moment, looking at the massive neural complex ahead of them. Somewhere in that organic computer was the consciousness that had consumed entire galaxies, but also somewhere in there were the absorbed minds of billions of innocent beings who had been enslaved to its will. Fire. The stellar cascade weapon detonated in the heart of the bioconstruct, creating a chain reaction that began converting matter to energy at the subatomic level. The effect spread outward at the speed of light, consuming the bioconstruct and everything in it. The Valkyrie barely escaped the expanding sphere of destruction. Throughout the 3 core systems, identical cascade weapons detonated simultaneously. The chain reactions consumed the Devourer fleet, their bioconstructs, and the millions of absorbed beings they contained. The hive mind that had terrorized multiple galaxies for centuries finally died in a burst of artificial stellar fire. The silence that followed was absolute. Across hundreds of star systems, devourer forces suddenly stopped moving as their connection to the collective consciousness was severed. Bioships drifted powerless through space. Ground forces collapsed where they stood. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was finally ended, but the victory felt hollow to those who had achieved it. Admiral Sullivan stood in the ruins of the command center aboard the Liberty, watching the tactical displays show empty space where 3 star systems had existed just hours before. "Casualty reports," she said quietly. "We lost 14 ships." "In the final assault," Commander Foster replied. "Total human casualties for the entire campaign are over 30,000. Confederacy losses are approximately twice that number. And civilian casualties? Unknown, probably in the millions." Aria Moonwhisper found Luna Martinez in the observation deck of the Valkyrie, staring out at the empty space where the core systems had been. The human commander looked older than her years, bearing the weight of decisions that no being should have to make. "Was it worth it?" Aria asked. Luna considered the question for a long time before answering. "Ask me in 100 years, when we see what kind of galaxy grows from the ashes of this war." The memorial service was held in space, attended by representatives from both civilizations. Human ships and Confederacy vessels drifted in formation around a monument constructed from the wreckage of destroyed bioships. The names of the dead were read aloud in a ceremony that lasted for 3 days. General Rosa Martinez spoke for the human forces. "We came here as strangers, called by a desperate plea for help. We leave as allies, bonded by sacrifice and shared purpose. The beings we fought beside have taught us that there are things worth protecting beyond our own survival." Sage Nightbloom spoke for the Confederacy. "We have learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the willingness to fight for what we value. Our new allies have shown us that sometimes the greatest kindness requires the greatest strength."